Hello and welcome to the Operators Association podcast. This is Greg, your athletics director, and today I'm going to be doing part 4 of the 6-part Hero's Journey podcast. Last week we did part 3, which was Hell Week and the conclusion of first phase of Buds. Today for part 4 we're going to be talking about all of second and third phase of Buds. So this is going to be a pretty big episode packed into one. So jumping right in here, going to start with day 1 of second phase. The first day of second phase was my absolute worst beating in all of Buds. So on the first day of second phase, you have a PIBI, which stands for Personnel Inspection, Barracks Inspection. Right? It's a room inspection and a uniform inspection. And I think the intent of this inspection was just to say, hey, motherfuckers, you're still in Buds. So it goes without saying, nobody passed this inspection. And it was a very long, very painful beating. A lot of trips to the surf, a lot of bear crawling back and forth to the surf, a lot of buddy drag bear crawls, which is essentially one guy bear crawling and a partner is hanging around your neck underneath you and you're dragging him through the sand while you're bear crawling. Did a lot of Smurf jacks, which are a pretty creative, pretty diabolical exercise. It's just a jumping jack, but performed at the bottom of a full squat the whole time. So those devolved pretty quickly. And we did a circle of push-ups where everyone in the class is in a circle or kind of an oval. And my hands are on the ground in push-up position, and my feet are on the shoulders of the person behind me. So everyone's feet are off the ground when you do this. So only hands are touching. Everybody's feet are on the shoulders of the person behind them. And I have a very distinct memory of being in the down position doing these circle push-ups. And this is just a distinct thing ingrained in my brain that I'll always remember. We're doing this on old cement, and the cement is kind of cracked and gnarled. And I guess it had rained the night before. So we're at the bottom of the push-up position. And my face is mushed into this cement, right? And there's water. There's standing rainwater that's in these cracks. And I remember moving my lips up and slurping rainwater out of the cement cracks. And I kind of had a little out-of-body experience at that time where at first I was legitimately, just because I was hurting so badly, I would take the few droplets of water I could get. And then I realized kind of the hilarity and the ridiculousness of this situation, how pitiful, what a low state I was at. And I thought, yeah, I'm hurting pretty bad right now if I'm sucking water out of the cracks of this cement. So that's a good reminder of the state I was in at the time. So day 1, PIBI, welcome to second phase, you're still in Buds. Now, hopefully all of you know second phase of Buds is dive phase. And for dive phase, you eventually move on to closed circuit rebreather diving. But you start off with open circuit scuba diving. So what open circuit and closed circuit means is with open circuit, if any of you have gone scuba diving or when you see people scuba dive on TV, on YouTube, open circuit means you breathe in compressed air and then you breathe out bubbles. So when there's a scuba diver underwater, you see a trail of bubbles coming behind them because what you exhale it's an open circuit, right? Air comes in and then you just release it. Closed circuit is when you have both an inhalation tube and an exhalation tube. So instead of breathing out bubbles, you breathe the air into your exhalation tube, it goes back down into your rig, and it gets recycled. And then it comes back up, and you breathe it in again. Now, I'll touch on the specifics of the rebreather rig a little more later on when we get to closed circuit. But the point is, the desired end state of a closed circuit rig is you don't produce bubbles. There's no off-gassing, because if you're on any sort of tactical operation, you can't have a trail of bubbles following you around. Obviously, everyone is going to know there's a scuba diver in the water. And if they know that there's a diver in the water, it is very, very easy to catch or kill you. So that would be a bad thing. So you start off second phase with what are called twin 80 tanks, and that's a dual tank scuba rig on your back. Now, these twin 80 tanks are very heavy. They're probably about 75 pounds. I believe they're made of aluminum. And you do all of what are called the OCs in the pool, or the CTT, the combat training tank. So the OC just stands for open circuit. And there's OC1, OC2, OC3, all the way through OC8. And those are all just different tests that you do in the pool. So like everything at Buds, there's a crawl, walk, run progression, right? If you've seen videos of pool comp, so pool comp is actually OC8 is the official name, also known as pool comp, pool competency. You don't start off doing pool comp, right? Where guys are crawling around at the bottom of the pool and instructors come down and tie your hose in a knot, shut your air off, flip your rig around, take your mask off, all of that, and you have to work through the problems. So you don't start off on that day one. There's a linear progression. They'll stair step you and get you to where you need to be. So I don't remember exactly the OC tests, but say OC1 is something relatively basic, right? Like you go down, you take your tanks off, you put them back on. Maybe you fill up your mask with water, you clear it. Basic, not too difficult things like that. And then you'll do whatever the test is. You'll do, say, OC1. And then on many of the levels, you'll come back and do OC2, and OC2 will be the exact same thing as OC1, but you'll do it at night. And what at night means, you don't actually do it at night. They'll give you a blacked out mask, so it's pitch black, so you can't see anything. And then you do the same test that you just did. Now, I believe you have 4 chances to pass each of these tests. Most people will pass these on their first try, I believe, until you get to OC8. And OC8 is more challenging. During OC8, you crawl along the bottom of the pool, and you just wait for instructors to come down and give you all different sorts of unique malfunctions to your rig. They shut off your air. They're going to tie your tubes in different knots. They're going to rip the mouthpiece out of your mouth. And you're going to have to, they might pull the tanks off your back, and you have a linear series of steps that you've been taught all along throughout second phase that you have to work through, right? You get to your air source, you go through your linear progression, and you get your rig back up online and working again. And everything that you do underwater is really predicated on staying calm. Everything we did underwater is really what taught me how to control my emotions well. I got into meditating a bit later on, but I realized that training underwater was really my introduction to meditation. I was meditating without knowing I was meditating. So, yes, if you are a person training for Buds and haven't done anything underwater yet, I would definitely recommend meditating as a way to practice staying calm and staying present in the moment for these underwater evolutions. Because when you're underwater, you have to conserve and utilize every ounce of oxygen that you have, right? You have to utilize it in the best possible way. So if your heart is pounding, if you're exerting a lot of energy, you're burning oxygen very rapidly. You're going to freak out, and you're going to have to surface because you're going to be totally out of oxygen. So if you can get yourself to stay calm throughout that process, you're going to conserve oxygen much better than somebody who's freaking out. You're going to be able to stay down there and stay on task and do what you need to do. Anyway, OC8, you get a bunch of malfunctions in your rig, you work through them, and eventually it will end with a whammy knot. And as you can probably guess, the whammy knot is a knot that you cannot undo. Definitely not something that you're going to be able to do while underwater. It's going to take a lot on land to get this knot out. So when you realize you've done everything in your power you've taken all the right steps to try to solve this problem, but it still can't be solved, then there's a certain procedure to take off your rig, and you have to kiss the bottom of the pool and then come to the surface at a very slow rate, exhaling the whole time. General rule of thumb, this is not just a Buds thing. If you ever go scuba diving, you never want to ascend faster than the rate of your bubbles. So if you're exhaling on the way up, don't surpass the bubbles that are coming out of your mouth. Go slower than the bubbles. I'm not going to deep dive all the different diving medical complications that can arise, but very simple principle is as you go down in water, there's greater pressure, greater atmospheric pressure, right? And at the surface, there's less pressure. So if you inhale compressed air at a greater depth and then you ascend, that same volume of air is expanding and getting bigger as there's less pressure around it. So if there's air in your body, if there's air in your lungs, that's why you never hold your breath while you're scuba diving, right? Whether you're going up, down, wherever, never hold your breath. Because if you're holding your breath, not exhaling, as you ascend in the water column, that air is expanding. So if your lungs are full at depth and then you hold your breath and swim upwards, eventually your lungs are going to burst. But just never hold your breath, breathe normally, you'll be fine. Lots of people scuba dive. This is not that high speed. So you passed OC8, you passed pool comp. You're at the top of the world in buds right now. You're all fired up. So typically there's what's called a BTG party after you pass pool comp that the whole class has. And BTG stands for basically a team guy. And what that means is obviously a lot of people fail out during first phase, during Hell Week. But pool comp or OC8 is the last really big hurdle that is typically a problem for people. If you pass first phase and then you pass OC8, a large majority, not everybody, certainly not everyone. We had 2 guys from my class get dropped in third phase. Another got dropped in SQT. So people still fail out or get kicked out of the course for different reasons. But by and large, if you pass OC8, you pass pool comp, then you're probably going to be a team guy. It's at least over 90% chance at this point. So you throw a BTG party. And on that note, I will say second phase is really the only time during buds that you have an opportunity to go out in San Diego on the weekends. Because first phase, one, you can barely leave the base, and if you're drinking in first phase, then you're a harder man than me. That's for damn sure. First phase is just kind of madness, right? It's a scramble, everybody trying to survive and get through. And then third phase, you leave and you go to San Clemente Island. So you're on the island, you're working 7 days a week. There's nowhere to go, period. So second phase is the one sweet spot in buds where you're through first phase and you're actually around in San Diego and have the weekends off. So it's your one shot to go out. Downtown San Diego, Pacific Beach is pretty popular during buds, and it's a fun time for sure. So after the BTG party, after you pass pool comp, usually you do what they call a Hoo-Yah dive. And Hoo-Yah means a million different things in the community. But in general, a Hoo-Yah dive means it's like a good deal dive. So it's kind of a reward to the class in some sense. It's like the formal buds version of a BTG party where you pass pool comp. So you go out in the ocean and you do one actual open circuit dive before you move on to the closed circuit drag or rig. So my class took this boat out and we went down and dove. We dove down to about 95 or 100 feet and swam around this sunken Canadian battleship. That was pretty cool. Because it was so deep, you didn't have a lot of bottom time down there, but it was a fun day for sure. The fact that you weren't in buds and went out on a boat to dive was pretty cool. So after the Hoo-Yah dive, you go back to the classroom. You start learning about the Drager. The Drager LAR 5 is the name of the closed circuit rig that we use. That's been in service for a very long time. They have more advanced rigs out there. I'm sure that's still what you're using in buds though. So how this rebreather rig works, you have a bottle of pure O2, pure oxygen. So you're breathing in pure oxygen, and then when you breathe out, all of your exhaled breath goes through the exhalation tube, and it goes through a canister with different chemicals that scrub the CO2 out of your exhaled breath and return the oxygen that's left in there. So every time you exhale, it scrubs out the CO2 and gives you back whatever oxygen is left. So obviously that amount is going to be less than the amount that you breathed in because your body absorbed a lot of the oxygen in there. So then the O2 bottle that you have supplements that, and adds a little bit more. But it's not the same as just breathing down the bottle the entire time. Being able to recycle that air gives you a lot more time, a lot more bang for your buck from the same bottle. And again, most importantly, the reason for recycling that air is so that you're not expanding bubbles while you're swimming. All of that gas is trapped inside the rig the whole time. So because you have this breathing bag that's full of air, or it's full of oxygen, I should say, that's a good point. A lot of people will say they're breathing oxygen when they're scuba diving. It's just compressed air. Hopefully you guys know there's a difference between air and oxygen, right? Oxygen is only, I believe, 21% of air. So when you dive scuba, you're just breathing compressed air. It's the same as the air that you breathe every day. Diving on pure oxygen is a different experience. It's awesome, actually. It makes you feel great after breathing pure oxygen for a couple hours. But it also changes how deep you're able to dive and how long you're able to stay down underwater. But another nuance to this rebreather rig where you have a breathing bag is the buoyancy is very different from just an open circuit rig. With an open circuit rig, it's really easy to control your buoyancy because you breathe in, you go up a tiny bit in the water column, and you exhale and you go down a tiny bit in the water column because you're inhaling gas and then you're exhaling gas. With the Draeger, there's a lot more nuance to learn, and it takes a lot longer to master your craft of diving, really, because you have to learn the buoyancy of the breathing bag and how much air you should have in your breathing bag at any point in time. You also have to master off-gassing, right? The first couple times you dive, you're still going to be having bubbles come out of everywhere from your gear, from your mask. You're going to have a leaky seal in your mask where bubbles escape. You're going to lose bubbles out of your mouthpiece maybe. And as you keep training, as you keep getting better and better, you'll see that guys are able to do it where they don't let any bubbles off at all. So you have the Draeger, crawl, walk, run progression, like always. You're going to dive in the pool first. Then you're going to move into the San Diego Bay. And honestly, I really like diving. I think diving is very cool. I definitely had fun diving. You can't see much in the bay during the daytime. It's pretty cloudy. But I will say diving at nighttime is a very unique experience that not a ton of people in the world have and is really, really cool. So 2 unique things about diving at night. One, bioluminescence is really cool. If you don't know what bioluminescence is, it's essentially light that different sea creatures give off, both plants and animals. You can kind of picture the northern lights in the sky, the green, blue. It can be all different colors. I've seen orange, green, blues. But especially in the San Diego Bay, there's algae or plankton that produce this. So just constantly as you're swimming, the bubbles, as you churn up the water, it emits this blue-green glowing aura. So as you're diving, just all the water rippling off your body, your wetsuit, you're basically surrounded by this blue-green fluorescent glow in the night, and it's kind of like a superhero. It's really wild. There's also different plants down there that you'll touch, pieces of seaweed essentially, that it looks like orange fireworks, like orange sparklers that shoot off when you touch these things, and these orange sparks essentially shoot out of these plants. It's really wild, but really cool experience. And the other extremely unique, memorable experience of diving at night is when you dive underneath something, whether that be a pier, a dock, a ship. And what's so memorable about this is the whole time you're diving at night, it's pitch black, right? You can't see anything. If you've ever done a float tank, I'm not going to say it's the same experience. It's certainly not, but it's similar in the sense of sensory deprivation. Because you're swimming at nighttime, you can't see anything. All you're doing, you have what's called your tack board or your attack board. And that's just something you hold with your hands right in front of your face. It has a compass on it, which is how you navigate. And there's a little glow stick that illuminates the compass. So there's a compass, a depth gauge, and a stopwatch, which tells you how long you've been diving. And that's it. That's all you have to navigate. A compass, a depth gauge, and a stopwatch. So you plan your dive beforehand, and you know exactly what cardinal directions, what degrees you have to swim for what length of time, because you know your pace count, and a certain length of time equals a certain distance at the pace that you're swimming at. But no matter how much you've gone over this dive and double-checked your math, and you know all of your legs of the dive, after you've been swimming for an hour and a half or 2 hours in pitch black, where you can go up or down in the water column, you can't see anything. It's this surreal other world you're swimming in. And again, no matter how many times you've double-checked your math and planned your dive accordingly on land, I think if you popped up in China, you wouldn't be surprised. You just lose all sense of time and direction after a while down there. But back to swimming under big things. So you're swimming along, pitch black, or at least you think it is, because you can't see anything the whole time. So you're swimming along, it's pitch black, and all of a sudden, it somehow gets darker. Like so heart-chillingly dark. You always dive with a buddy, right? You're always hooked up to a buddy with a buddy line that's just carabinered into both of you. So you're never more than about 6 feet apart. But I'll tell you what, thank God you have a dive buddy, because you've never experienced such intense blackness in your entire life. It's a totally unique phenomenon where you think you're in the pitch black this whole time, and somehow everything around you gets darker, and you instantly know, wow, I am underneath something really big right now. So I hope one day some of you listening to this are going to be in second phase doing your first night dive. You're going to dive, you're going to swim underneath that first ship, and you're going to think back to this podcast and say, holy shit, now I get it. So towards the end of second phase, you're going to have what's called Draeger Hell Week. And it sounds scary, right? Hell Week again. Hell Week sucked, oh no. It's not that bad. So Draeger Hell Week just means you dive a lot. You dive during the day, and you dive at night, and you don't get a lot of sleep for 1 week. It's hard, right? It's taxing. It's long days, very long days. But don't let the name fool you. It is certainly not first phase Hell Week. It's just long days with a lot of diving, and guys will inevitably get irritable and pissed off at each other between the lack of sleep and the breathing pure O2. At one point during Draeger Hell Week, you're probably going to have a memorable beating or workout. For us, it was running back from the demo pits with your Draegers on. So the school bus that typically takes you to your dive site, just drove down to the demo pits one night. We had done something egregious, like a guy had left a water bottle on the bus, any excuse to get you to do this. And they dropped us off at the demo pits, which are 1.5 miles down the beach, and gave us some very, way too short timeline to be back at the classroom on the main compound with our Draeger, with fully rigged up, right? So we're in wetsuits with these heavy Draeger rigs around your neck. Didn't say this earlier, but if you have no idea what a Draeger is, you can just Google it. But the Draeger sits on your chest and your stomach. It's on the front of you rather than a typical scuba tank, which would go on your back. So there's a strap around your neck kind of holding this thing up. They're great to swim with while you're in the water, but certainly not meant for being on land. So everybody's wearing their Draegers. You've got your fins on one wrist. You've got your mask. You've got your buoy. You have your tack board. Again, wearing a wetsuit, and you're running through the soft sand, carrying all this gear, bouncing up and down at as fast a pace as you can possibly manage. And then you get back there and get beat with your wetsuits on, which is hot, if you hadn't guessed. So that's something to look forward to. Good old Bud stories. But overall, second phase is a good time. You're through first phase. You're starting to actually learn something, right? It's the fundamentals, but the fundamentals are what it's all about. You're learning an actual practical skill, and it's cool. Like scuba diving is cool. Diving the rebreather rig is cool. Diving at night is really cool. And you have more freedom. You're a brown shirt now. You're not a first phase student. You get to go out in San Diego on the weekends. Your body's starting to recover from Hell Week. So overall, you're feeling pretty good in second phase. Now I'm going to get into third phase, which was my favorite part of Buds. You do not go to San Clemente Island right away in third phase. You hang around for a little bit. One of the first things you do in third phase is land navigation. And land nav may have been my favorite part of all of Buds. I don't know if it was my favorite, but I absolutely loved land nav. Land nav is essentially glorified hiking. It's like scavenger hunt hiking. So for 1 week, you go out to Laguna or Campo, California. You camp out there every night. And during the day, you just get dropped off at some location. You get 8 points. When I say points, I mean GPS coordinates. You have your map. You plot your points, and you go find them all. When you get to your point, there's some sort of metal stake in the ground that will have a series of letters on it, so you write those down to show that you found that point. But it is legitimately like glorified Easter egg hunt hiking. It is so much fun. Now, I will caveat that by saying if you are really bad at land nav, it will not be fun. I've said this to some people who were shocked and absolutely hated land nav because if you're not good at it, it can be very stressful, right? Because you can fail land nav, absolutely, and get dropped or rolled from the course because of it. So if you're on the bubble, if you're a guy that can't find his points, then it could be a stressful time. But if you're fine with it, it's really, really fun. You're out in the woods. It's a beautiful location, really nice scenery. You're just hiking for at least 8 hours a day. And while you're out there, you're either completely solo on your own or at the beginning you're with a partner. So regardless, either way, you don't have the instructors with you. You're not getting beat. You're not getting yelled at. You're just hiking by yourself. And, very happy with your decision to go to Buds at this point. The last day of land nav especially, I have this really cool, distinct memory. I had 1 point, and then I could kind of circumnavigate a mountain to get to my next point. But I was doing well. I was early on time. I said, I'm going to try to climb over the top of this thing just for fun. So I climbed up this mountain, kind of difficult to get up. And when I came down the back side of it, it looked like the elephant graveyard from The Lion King. The whole backside of this mountain had been on fire very recently. So it was kind of black and ashy and covered with soot. And there was mountain lion footprints through the ash and sand on the backside of this sloping mountain. So I was just walking through that thinking, what a cool place to be. It's literally mountain lion footprints and then my footprints next to them in the sand. So I'll stop saying it, but I love land nav. Now, for the brief time that you're on the Buds compound as a third phase student, you are absolutely the man. I remember as a first phase or as a second phase student seeing those third phase guys occasionally at the galley. It was a very rare experience, right? Because third phase students are at the Buds compound for a very limited amount of time. They go out to a different area to do land nav, and then they fly to San Clemente Island where they spend the rest of the third phase. But number one, you see the red helmets, and they wear kits everywhere on base. Your kit is your body armor, right? Your vest, essentially, that holds your ballistic plates in it. And in Buds, you don't even have plates in the kit. You just weigh them down with, fake dummy magazines and full Nalgene bottles full of water, things like that. But it doesn't matter. To a second or first phase Buds student, seeing those third phase students with their kits on over their camis and their red helmets looks like the most badass motherfuckers on the planet. And you know what? When you're in third phase, you feel like it too. Third phase is for hard bodies. Third phase is man camp. When you get out to San Clemente Island, it is a big old rock out in the ocean, right next to Catalina Island, ironically, which is, beautiful, expensive tourist hub. And San Clemente is just a barren rock full of shooting and demolition ranges. But it is just man camp. It's pretty Spartan feel. There's not a lot of buildings there. It's a small campus, right, where it's just, there's a classroom building, there's the barracks that you stay, there's the chow hall where you eat, there's the armory where you keep all your weapons and clean your guns, and there's a fight gym. There's the instructor house, the instructor barracks, and not much else. That's pretty much it. It's a very small compound. You work 7 days a week on the island, no weekends. You fight, you learn to shoot, you learn to blow things up. You do chow PT before every meal. So it could be a different thing every day. They actually have a wheel you spin sometimes that has all different exercises on it. So every time before you're able to go into the chow hall and eat a meal, your chow PT could be PDR, which stands for pull-ups, dips, rope climbs. It could be a sprint to the top of Frog Hill under a certain amount of time. Frog Hill is just a steep, rocky hill nearby that there's a frog statue all the way at the top of. It takes, I don't know, a minute, 15 seconds if you really sprint up it. There's big tire flips. There's sledgehammer workouts. All sorts of things, but basically you get a good pump in before you go in and eat. So some of the big tickets of third phase. Shooting. I'm sure guys have questions about shooting. You might be wondering, man, I've never shot before. Am I going to be at a disadvantage at buds? Or you might be thinking, I've been shooting, I've been hunting my whole life. I'm going to crush this. And for either one, you might be right. Here's what I'll say about shooting background. You 100% do not need any shooting background whatsoever. There are absolutely guys that grow up hunting, that were taught how to shoot well, that are good shots and go on to be snipers, etc. But there are also guys that have never shot a gun in their life that become exceptional shots. If you don't fall into the category of someone who is taught how to shoot really well and have shot and hunted a lot throughout your life, you're actually probably better off never having shot a gun. Because people that are just kind of casual recreational gun shooters, or people that were taught the wrong way to shoot a gun, are at a disadvantage. If you have zero experience, you're going to be very coachable, and you're in a much better starting position than someone who has casual or incorrect shooting experience beforehand. So 100% do not worry about it. If you've never shot a gun, don't go out and try to shoot before you leave for the Navy or whatever your selection course is. If you show up a totally blank slate and are just open to what the instructors are teaching you, look, at Buds, they had awesome instructors. They had very, very good shooting instructors on the island. I was one of those guys. I had shot guns before, but very, very little, right? I had essentially zero experience shooting. But like I said, the instructors are great. They teach you, like everything else, that crawl, walk, run progression I keep coming back to. And if you just listen to what they say and practice it over and over again, get out at night after the classroom and dry fire, you will be a good shot. You can become a great shot, zero experience needed. Demolition on the island is pretty cool. Biggest thing I'd say about demo is you have to be very detail-oriented. You have to be very safe, essentially. And the way that you're safe is by following instructions carefully and not skipping steps. There's no easier way to get sent home than by being unsafe, either on the shooting range or on the demo range. There's one guy in my class who cut through a blasting cap, and he was on a plane off the island. I never even saw him since the event. I heard that he cut the cap, and that was the last I ever saw this person. He was on a plane that same day. And if you haven't figured it out by now, you are not supposed to cut through blasting caps. He was supposed to crimp the cap. There's a crimping tool and a cutting tool. And he used the wrong one. A blasting cap is something you'd put at the end of some sort of fuse. It's a small, sensitive, explosive device that you would then stick into, again, at the end of a fuse, you would stick into a larger piece of less sensitive explosive material like C4. Because if you're carrying around a huge wad of C4, you don't want that to be extremely sensitive, right? You want that to be a very stable, explosive material so that there's no risk of it going off prematurely. So the blasting cap is much smaller, but more sensitive, and you would use that to initiate the explosion of the larger explosive material. But the moral of the story is be safe with demo. It'll get you sent out of buds very quickly, or any selection course, no doubt. Plus, it's dangerous because it's demolition, right? If a blasting cap goes off in your hand, it will blow your hand off for sure. Another kind of fun thing on the island is you make bets with the instructors. Now, this can go either way. You can initiate a bet with them, or they can come up with a bet for you. This could be something practical, like hitting a target at the shooting range, hitting a specific target with a 40 mic grenade launcher. I made a bet that I could go run up Frog Hill, touch the frog, and come back to the starting line in less than 2 minutes. I think it was 2 minutes, maybe 2 minutes, 10 seconds. Failed that bet. Guess I thought I was faster than I was. So if any of you can sprint and ever make it to the island, redeem my bet one day. Anyway, typically bets are for, if you win a bet, it's something good for your whole class. Like maybe getting out of Chow PT. Or just some stupid morale boosting rewards. Like wearing different uniforms or wearing your UDT shorts instead of pants. Class is always going to be in a good mood after you win a bet. Doesn't matter how stupid the bet is. It's a good morale booster and it's just fun. If you lose a bet, typically you're going to be doing some physically painful things, right? Maybe a long bear crawl. We had to flip a tire all the way to the top of a very long hill one day called Al Huey. You might have to do flights, which are kind of a funny thing, but essentially doing a long run up a hill carrying a pallet on your back. They're called flights because you pretend to be an airplane and the pallet is your wings. So yeah, you get the idea. At any point in time on the island, really, you can make a bet. If you have a good idea, you can pitch your bet to the instructor staff, and they'll probably negotiate the terms a little bit because they are kind of the house in casino terms. And the house doesn't always win here, but it's the bets are at least tilted 51-49 in their favor. But it's fun. Make bets, even if you're going to lose them. Don't be a coward. Have some big balls and go for it. Now, the last thing I will say about the island, last two things. One is great, and one is horrible, and is the best kept secret of the island. Probably the best kept secret of buds, period, which is absolutely horrible. So I'll start with the good. The good, ironically, is the 5.5 mile swim. Now, all throughout buds, I hated swimming, and I mean hated. I was probably the worst swimmer in our class. Maybe I'm being hard on myself, but whatever. I'm going to say I was probably the worst swimmer in our class. And all throughout buds, you do these 2 mile ocean swims right in front of the buds compound, right? So up and down Coronado Beach, you swim a mile north along the shore and then go around a buoy and you swim a mile back to the front of the compound. I hated these swims, absolutely hated them. So naturally, I was not too excited for a 5.5 mile swim. But that was totally wrong. I love the 5.5 mile swim. So here's why. All the 2 mile swims you do in front of the buds compound, you can't see anything in the water. The water is not clear. There's nothing to look at. And you're putting out so hard the whole time because you have your timeline that you have to make. And it was really a max put out for whatever the timeline was, 80 minutes. The whole time, almost an hour and a half, right? Well over an hour of max put out, salt water in your mouth. Just not fun. Didn't like swimming. On the island, the 5.5 mile swim is all one direction. So you get on a bus, they take you to a certain point on the island, you go to this big pier that's, I don't know, say 30 feet high. You walk to the end of the pier, jump off the pier into the water to start your swim. So you jump off the pier, land in the water, you put your fins on, you start swimming. 5.5 mile swim is not timed. Now it is, they time everyone. There's I think it's called the Waterman's Guild, if you make it underneath 3 hours. Nobody in our class made it underneath 3 hours because there's a bad current going the other way and whatever. not important. But the point is, you're timed and you have to move relatively quickly. You have to put out, but it's not a sprint like the 2-mile swims are. And the whole time, the water there out at San Clemente is crystal clear. So if it's 40 feet deep, you can see straight to the bottom. You can see absolutely everything. There's colorful fish. There's all different wildlife out there. And people talk about sea lions swimming next to them, which, is probably kind of cool, but kind of terrifying. I did not have any sea lions while I was there. There actually are tons of sharks in that area, but luckily did not see any. But I loved it. It was truly an odyssey. It was a unique adventure. And you're with your swim buddy the whole time. You can actually talk because, again, you're not sprinting. So I had a great time. I loved the 5.5-mile swim. It was a cool experience, and I did not expect that going into it. And now I'm going to disclose to you the best-kept secret of buds. Because a lot of things in buds are overhyped. A lot of different evolutions get a lot of attention. You hear about them, you see them on TV, and you finally get there, and it's not that big of a deal. Now I'm going to tell you about something that you have certainly never seen on TV, and you never hear about. And that is CS gas. CS gas is by far the most intensely miserable experience that I've ever had. And what it is after you're at one of the ranges, I believe it's after a demo range, you run over to the CS gas area. And you don't know what's coming, right? But they intentionally make you run over there so that you are out of breath. So you sprint over here. You have to make it in a certain timeline, which is pretty short. And once you get there, the whole class bands together, and they tell you to take a knee. So everybody's kneeling. An instructor comes forward with a gas mask on, and he's holding a rake with 4 canisters on it. He pops these 4 canisters at the end of the rake, and they look like smoke grenades, essentially. They're CS grenades. This white smoke starts coming out, and he just walks around with the rake in his gas mask and puts this stuff directly in your face. Now, you can go on YouTube, see videos of other people in the military getting CS gassed. I promise you it is not the same experience. For example, if you see videos of anyone standing up while getting CS gassed and they remain standing up, not at all the same experience or level of intensity. I don't know if it's either a different gas or just the concentration of it is exponentially higher at buds. But this is, I would say, for sure, the most intensely miserable experience that I have ever felt in my life. Not even close. As a classmate very poetically described it, it feels like you're being skull-fucked by Satan. And guys will be yelling, screaming, groaning, smashing their heads into the ground, rolling around. Everyone's arms are locked together, but people will try to break free. The one thing you can't do is run. You have to sit there and take it. And in most classes, maybe 1 or 2 people will get up and try to run away, usually to be tackled by an instructor. And in our case, there was one kid who ran, and he was dropped from the course soon afterwards, so that probably didn't help his cause. You just have to kneel there, locking arms, writhing around in pain, and take it. So if anyone listening to this is going to buds, I'm sorry. I feel for you. I legitimately do. I do not wish that on anyone. But if you do, hit me up on OA, because I would love to hear your thoughts about it afterwards. The last night on the island, you'll have a big party with all the instructors. Pretty cool. Have a big bonfire. Get to talk to them. And then the next day, you'll head back to San Diego. Now, I'll close with Bud's graduation, because Bud's graduation is kind of awesome. And it's not awesome in the way you would expect. I'll explain. So you just went through this infamous 6-month-long military training course, right? You made it through first phase. which was miserable. You did boats, logs, your ruck runs, obstacle courses, swims, timed runs, everything. You made it through Hell Week, earned your brown shirt, went to second phase, learned to dive, right, passed pool comp, made it to third phase, did your land nav, went out to the island, learned to shoot, learned to blow things up. You got CS gassed. You're a hard motherfucker. You successfully complete all these big milestones. You graduate BUDS. And BUDS graduation is just your class lines up on the grinder one day. Your instructors come, shake your hands, and they give you one piece of paper. It says United States Navy, Naval Special Warfare Basic Training Command, Certificate of Graduation. This is to certify that your name has completed Basic Underwater Demolition / SEAL Training, Class XXX, presented this day of November, your year. And that's it. You get handed this piece of paper, they shake your hand, they say, good job. This is only the beginning. You got a lot more to go. And you walk off the grinder. There's no ceremony, no speaker, no parents, no audience. You're just on the grinder where you've done so many beatings and where it all began, that first morning of first phase. You get a piece of paper, a handshake, a head nod, and you walk off. And you just graduated BUDS. So that's the end of the 4th episode. Thanks a lot for tuning in. I'll see you guys next time. Episode 5, we're going to dive into SQT, SEAL qualification training, and all the different blocks that entails. Keep training and stay hard.